There are changes down the road. But the president and I began to talk, after the first of the year, and I went back to him in early March and said, I'm really optimistic we're going to meet the targets. The enrollment is going well. The site is working well. I think once we finish this first chapter, you really should begin to look for the next secretary who can be here through the end of your term. And that really wasn't a commitment I was willing to make, and he knew that.
Did he try to talk you out of it?
Well, it made it pretty clear that that really wasn't an option to stay on. I mean, I thought it was fair to either commit till January of 2017 or leave with enough time that he would get a strong, competent leader.
All right, so the pure political question, is the resignation a sign of Obamacare's success or failure? Republicans were quick to pounce on that this week in New Hampshire. Ted Cruz, Scott Brown talking about it. Ted Cruz speaking to our own Kelly O'Donnell. Watch.
Kathleen Sebelius's resignation is the latest indication of just what a disaster Obamacare is. Obamacare is the most disastrous, the most damaging piece of legislation in modern times. And I believe she resigned because Senate Democrats are scared.
As you go along and you learn more and more and more about Obamacare, it forces us to make a choice. Live free or log on. Right? Live free or log on. And guess what? In New Hampshire, guess what we choose? We choose freedom.
This is why people love politics. So how long did you take to come up with that line? But Paul Gigot, this is the political question, right? This is not about actuarial science. It's who's going to win the fight over whether Obamacare is a good thing or a bad thing, government run amok or government helping people.
Well, actuarial science will play into that.
Yeah.
It affects what the premiums will be. And you saw WellPoint, I think, recently say we're going to ask for double-digit premium increases in 2015. That is going to be a big...
But the government could also try to intervene on that and subsidize that, which I know you love at the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah, price controls. We really love price controls, government-directed pricing. But look, the political issue isn't the website. The political issue is what they did to the individual marketplace for health care. How many people lost their insurance? What are the prices you're going to get? What you're going to pay? What limits do you have on your doctor and so on? And that's where the Republicans are really going to try to fight in November. If they're smart, they'll mesh their critique with an agenda to fix those problems.
Will anybody listen to an agenda to fix them? Is there a real agenda?
Sure. There's going to be a tremendous demand. I mean, right now, this is not a complicated one. The perception of it, which in politics is reality, is complete failure. More than half the people disapprove. Now, you can argue, oh, it's going to get better through the experience. That could change the numbers in time. Or I make the actual science, actuary science, the sexy area, argument that it's going to drive the cost up and make it even worse. And we're going to litigate it on Election Day, and then we'll see what happens.
There's another big issue coming up for the fall, and it's a fight over voting. Voting rights and access to voting. The president, we're marking the 50th anniversary of the passage of the Civil Rights Act under President Johnson, and at the LBJ Library, the president, the first lady were there, former president speaking as well, and the president, Congressman Edwards, was very strong on this point about efforts to restrict voting. Here's what he said.
Voting's not a Democratic issue, it's not a Republican issue, it's an issue of citizenship. It's what makes our democracy strong. But it's a fact. This recent effort to restrict the vote has not been led by both parties. It's been led by the Republican Party.
Pretty tough charge, backed up. Washington Post in the last 15 months, at least 9 states have enacted laws, voting changes, making it harder to cast ballots, despite very little evidence of voter fraud out there.
Well, very little evidence, almost no evidence of voter fraud. And I think these states have reacted to a political agenda that's about taking away people's right to vote and their access to the polls. I think it's backed up by a Supreme Court that's done great damage to the Voting Rights Act. Republicans still holding on to a bill that they won't bring to the floor that actually could restore those protections. And I think the president is dead on this one. And we're not going to go into November with people not understanding the restrictions that are being placed on their right to vote.
Kara, as you look at politics around the country at the grassroots level, it could be a about marriage equality. It could be about just pure access to voting. This is where past is prologue. This is not a, looking at 50 years ago. It's looking about your ability to vote today. How powerful is the issue?
I think it's, young people, it'll be interesting because I think one of the groups in this election that's going to be very important are, again, young people, young women especially, and how they get access to information and how they vote and all kinds of things around politics. And I think what's interesting is how you reach those voters and how you empower them to do different things. And I think more about how voting is going to be in 10 years and 15 years. This is not, the Voting Rights Act, no matter how you slice it, is one of the greatest pieces of legislation in our history. And the question is, how are we going to change voting? Just the way we're talking about Bitcoin or currency, all these things are going to change drastically. And it'll be interesting around voting is how voters, become empowered using, again, the phones, the digital means, things like that, because that's how we're going to vote.
Internet voting is a very interesting question. It's now done in some small countries.
We're going to do it, period.
It's going to come in time, and it's going to increase turnout, and from my point of view, also in primaries, which for the market-based party, the more people participate in a primary.
It would be good if this were a conversation about how we expand voting and voting protection, but what's going on in the country right now is about how to take those rights away.
When you move into digital things, you do expand it because you give access to people in a very different way. I mean, think about, swipe left, swipe right. It could be kind of an interesting thing.
But Paul, let me ask you this.
If voter ID were about voter disenfranchisement, why was African American turnout so much greater in 2012? I mean, it has had zero effect on turnout. Actually,
because people were angry and they decided to exercise their right to vote.
That's the point. This is about voter mobilization. This is about playing to the identity politics of Democrats who fear that the turnout won't.
But then isn't the opposite true as well? If that's true, isn't the opposite true that if you're in a state where you want to discourage that same demographic from coming out, you try to raise the bar to what it takes to actually be able to vote?
It could be, but there is, and it may be the motivation of some Republicans, there is no evidence that it does that at all. And I think that we want to make sure that the franchise is protected by making sure that it is actually an
Can I ask one provocative idea is coming out this week? Andy Young, civil rights leader, former ambassador to the United Nations, had an idea about issuing Social Security cards with a picture on it. And Bill Clinton, former President Clinton, thought that was a good idea. The president's taking it under advisement. Is this a civil liberties concern, or is it a good idea?
Well, it's going to be, obviously that's going to be the debate, but again, cards, going, walking. I mean, you get your groceries delivered, you get your, Amazon is suddenly going to bring drones someday, and I think they probably will, actually. But the idea is, how do you then create a voting environment that is easier for people to use the way they use other services? And I think that's where it's going to head, and that'll be really interesting, is how you identify yourself in a digital sense, and then get to vote and get to do all kinds of civic things and bring them together in an easy way, because everyone, no matter how, everyone's going to have these smartphones, no matter what their economic class.
I think it's a plot by LifeLock, because if you're going to be flashing your Social Security number everywhere, it's going to be an absolute it's Miracle Grove for identity theft.
I've got about a minute left. I want to hit one other presidential politics point. A lot of talk this week about Jeb Bush and his comments this week about illegal immigrants actually committing a crime that is an act of love. A lot of focus on whether he is, does he really want to do this, and two, is he going to be eaten alive by the primary process? What's your read on this?
Well, one, it's way too early to figure out if he's running or not. There's a speculation machine in D.C. We're 2 years out of a campaign. He's taking plenty of time to.
Right. It's called our lifeblood. It's called oxygen.
It's a machine. It's incredible.
That's all you do here.
The wider question is, I was proud of him, regardless of if he runs, because I believe that leadership has been replaced in American politics by marketing. We micro-target, micro-pander, let's focus group and figure out how to win, this, win that. And we've all set of politicians who tell you what they think is right, they make an argument for it, and then you figure it out. That's who Jeb Bush is. He's not a typical weather vane kind of guy. So if he runs, that's what you're going to get. I think it's what the country's looking for, but we'll see what happens.
All right, we'll see if he actually wants to run. The roundtable is going to be back.